promised you an update, didn't I, on the Magnifica cruise ship. Now, operators say today there are no passengers on board this ship in WA with upper respiratory illnesses, despite claims made by WA Premier Mark McGowan yesterday that at least 250 of the 1,700 passengers were in poor health. Today the ship docked in Fremantle to refuel. I'm told it was refuelling only. But Nathan Hondros, WA Today political reporter, he'll have all the detail. He joins me now via Skype. Nathan, thank you very much for your time. This looks like it could be a case of someone playing politics with a bit of information and the way it was managed yesterday, if I can be kind. You fill me in, but tell me also, did anyone get off this ship today?
Peter, no one got off the ship. The communications on this about this incident were just appalling. So journalists heard about it from the Premier, who held a press conference with the state's Police Commissioner Chris Dawson. Now, they told us that there were more than 250 people with upper respiratory illnesses aboard the ship. It was steaming towards Fremantle. And of course, what that meant, although they didn't say this, for the state's health system would be that it would have crippled it. If we had to take care of that many COVID-19 patients, then that would have been horrendous for our state, which is underprepared anyway. So we wrote that story up. We published it, but then I started pursuing it. And it turns out, according to MS Cruises, which is one of the largest shipping companies in the world, that there are absolutely nobody on board with any kind of respiratory illness or even any flu-like symptoms. So at some point, there's been a miscommunication along the way. So nobody's come off the ship. Nobody was ever going to come off the ship. Nobody on the ship needed medical attention from Western Australian authorities. So it's been an absolute the panic it caused. I can't overestimate the kind of reach that our story had. People.
Yeah, let me just jump in there and explain why, because the word we got was 250 people on this boat and perhaps even more would have needed urgent medical attention. Now, we're not saying they would have had coronavirus. That wasn't the allegation yesterday, but upper respiratory trouble could mean ventilators and other things. There's only about 243 ventilators in the entire state of WA, so it would have overwhelmed the WA system. Now, interestingly, two things have happened out of this. One, some people perhaps being unkind to the Premier say that this is him beating up an issue yesterday because he has copped a lot of criticism for acting too slowly in WA. But also, too, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard that his chief bureaucrat, the head of Premier in Cabinet in WA, has resigned or taken leave. Fill me in, Nathan.
Yeah, so the chap's called Darren Foster. Now, he was the political appointee put in charge of the Department of Premier and Cabinet in Western Australia. He is McGowan's pick. Now, he was, by agreement, stood down on Monday morning before this story broke about the Magnifica. It's caused a lot of talk in political circles because it's quite an odd time to be jettisoning your chief bureaucrat. So as to the allegations about McGowan beating it up, look, the Premier's office say very firmly that there was miscommunication from the ship. They say that the ship let federal authorities know that there were these people with upper respiratory illnesses, but the ship operators, and in fact I've been in contact with people on the ship, they say they were required to notify the federal government about any illness whatsoever. So the 298 people that they notified the federal government that had been ill on board the ship were, and bearing in mind this is 1,700 older people, everything from stomach aches to damaged knees to people who had drunk too many mango daiquiris over the baccarat table. So there's been a miscommunication. I've got to say, in the West, there's been a lot of this going on. On Friday, our chief medical officer, Dr. Andrew Robertson, he was out saying, no, everyone should go to the pub this weekend and observe of social distancing measures. And then on Sunday night, we've got the Prime Minister coming out, shutting down all pubs, clubs and restaurants in the nation. So there's a communications problem going on somewhere that people are getting mixed messages. Today, the border's shut for Western Australia. You've got enormous
I might have a
problems
picture of that. Yeah, I might have a picture. We'll put it up on the screen. You can see as far as the eye can see there, people trying to leave the Nullarbor. You can't get any worse than that. There's just a level of panic, I think, going on in the West.
Yeah, and look, the orders aren't clear on the ground. I understand the police officers who are managing that border crossing, there's confusion about what to do with these people. If they, according to the government, the border's shut at 12. But look, what that really means is people will have to self-isolate. But there's not enough, there's no beds to keep people at on the border there. So it's really going to be up to people to manage their own self-isolation. And we know how well that works. It's really up for people to, it's an honour system, really, isn't it? So I was listening to you and Andrew before. The measures have to be tough. They have to be clear. And what there is a lack of clarity, which means people, I think, aren't really taking them seriously.
Look, and I'll be kind, my father would have called it a bugger's muddle, and this is a problem with federation between the states and the Commonwealth, and you can see it very clearly on the issue of the Ruby Princess. Whilst ships come into our territorial waters cleared by customs, which is border protection now, and it's a Commonwealth entity, whether they disembark or not against the health rules, they are determined state by state, and that's where New South Wales Health let us all down, I think, letting those people off Ruby Princess in the way they did, in the cover of darkness, which, as I said last night, tells you they all knew something was up. Got to leave it there. I really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you, Nathan Hondros.
Always a pleasure.